Welcome to The Aquatic Life, a podcast about underwater photography, diving, and adventure travel. I'm Todd Reimer, and with me, as always, is Dalton.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
How's it going? Another week under house arrest here, as we're on podcast week number 2.
Right? I'm ready. I'm already antsy.
You know, it's funny. Everyone else is complaining that everyone's gaining so much weight because they have to work from home. But given the fact that over the last year I've already worked from home, I think I'm losing weight because I'm going out to eat a lot less than I normally would if I was working home. So it's right. The same or better for my health.
Yeah, same here. No, like not much has changed. I either work from home or the studio, or I'm like, not much has changed, man.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, as we always do every week, why don't we start off with a little bit of what we've been doing since we last podcasted? So what have you been up
to? Being stuck inside is what I've been up to, man.
You've been working on a new YouTube video from what I remember.
Yeah. I was trying to find ways to stay busy, and actually it's actually a good time to get things done that you haven't had time to before. People are complaining that I'm stuck at home. I really don't have time to do anything. Well, if you're a diver, you've got gear that could be maintained, cleaned, pulled out and checked. If you're a photographer, same thing. I'm sure you've got photos you could go back through and, make sure all your photos are in order and in the right spot on your hard drive, and camera gear that can be cleaned and examined, and just general routine maintenance and upkeep. All those things that we bitch and complain about never having enough time to do.
Yeah, I did none of that this week, but those are all good ideas.
Yeah, I didn't do a lot of it. I just, like I said, like you mentioned, I worked on a sports photography video that I released yesterday on YouTube. Basically what it's like to be in a real football game, working. I know a lot of people are like, oh, you get the best seat. True, I do get the best seats in the house, but it's not as glamorous as it might sound. I mean, you're actually doing a job, so you've got a lot of stuff going on. And so I just go over that stuff and what it's like to shoot a whole game, do the post-processing, and send things up to the wire service. So that's pretty much that guy.
Yeah, I think it's kind of cool to see, since I got a sneak preview of it. You see all these pictures in magazines, on newspapers and things like that, and that's fun. That's great. If you just think someone just takes a memory card and uploads it, but then you realize, photographers every game are taking thousands of photos. You have to quickly turn around and cull those images, do some processing, and upload it. And because of that, there's special tools or special processing workflow that you go through, and it's pretty cool to get a behind the scenes look at that. So definitely worth checking out.
And what about you? What have you been doing this week?
Yeah. So as for me, again, on the IT side, following up on a couple of leads, that's going well. And then on the photography side, I didn't get around to doing any photography work itself, which I had planned since last week, but that's okay. I'll get to it soon enough. The rest has just been, I had to finally download pictures from my Mammoth trip and finally catalog those. I'm going through and culling those as well, and trying to see if there's anyone to tweak. So I've just started that process.
Well, a couple of those that you sent me while you were up there looked really good. I like the one of Convict Lake.
Convict Lake, yeah.
Convict Lake. That was pretty cool. The video you sent me of that was really nice.
Yeah, I think one of those things where it was, I could only go in the middle of the day, sunny and no clouds, but there's still some great shots, especially with mountains to be had, and
right.
There'll be opportunities for some good black and whites to be made out of them. And in the meantime, it's still beautiful.
And honestly, that's one of the things that I had thought when you showed it to me. I'm like, well, it's the middle of the day, but for the middle of the day, that is a really nice shot. Normally it's the first thing I think is, oh, that would have looked a lot better at sunrise or sunset, but it looked pretty darn good out of the box that you sent me.
Yeah. Thanks, dude. Appreciate it. a lot of fun. Looking forward to doing it, getting up there again and being able to go at a nicer time of day or when there's a bit more clouds in the sky. It'll be it was a good scouting trip, and I'll get a few keepers out of it, but can't wait to go back once the apocalypse is over.
Yeah. Mentioning that, it had a kind of a sad week. I got a notice pretty much every day this week that it's been snowing in Yosemite every day. They got night before last, they got like 8 inches, and last night they got like 4 or 6 inches.
That's, yeah. So we're stuck with looking at the webcams.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that's funny. If you think about it, this kind of started all about Horsetail Falls was right at the start, right before the sky fell, literally. We were going to go up there. We were going to go up there and take some shots. And it was actually not coronavirus that stopped us. It was the fact that it hadn't rained the entire month of February.
Right. And there was no snow on the ground. And
there was no snow on the mountain. So even there was not ideal from any standpoint, but probably saved us from contracting disease anyway with the thousands of other people that probably did go up anyway. So
right, exactly.
Ended up being for the best.
Right on. So what are we getting into today?
Well, I thought we have a fun topic in store for us. I think we should chat about some of our favorite places to travel for underwater photography.
That sounds fun and exciting and complicated.
Yeah, well, we're going to try to keep this kind of laid back and see where it goes. Obviously, we're LA based, so a lot of our recent travel, most of our travel are easy places to get to or in and around the US and the Caribbean, but we'll definitely be touching on some places outside of that area. But hopefully we can do some follow-ups and special other trip reports that concentrate on one area or the other. Having said that, before we get in there, what would you say makes a good overall destination for, like, if you had to dive somewhere and you're like, man, that's an amazing trip? Obviously the photography is there, but what else comes to mind? I'm saying, what's the amazing dive destination? What really comprises it other than the obvious sea life?
Well, I think that could be a long list. I mean, ease of diving, and that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a liveaboard, but, are we stuck in a hotel that's an hour from the dock, or is there no shore diving? Is there shore diving? Things like that. But if you're going to a diving destination, like Bonaire, Cozumel, Grand Cayman, where there's, some good shore diving. Well, not Cozumel, but Bonaire and Caymans, there's some really good shore diving. It makes it super easy.
Yep.
Or like we were on the liveaboard in the Maldives. It doesn't get much easier than that once the traveling is done. You get on the boat and you don't do anything but dive and eat and talk diving for the next, 10 days. But so it's
ease of diving is definitely one of the big
ease
ones,
of diving.
Right?
Yeah. Ease of diving. Some sort of, I don't want to say nightlife, but, good food, good food makes everything better.
Yep.
There's similarly, our trip to the Maldives, the food was not very good. So it's kind of like, okay, the ease of diving is fantastic, but the food sucks for the most part. So you're like, how was that trip? It was all right. So the food can make a difference. 1 or 2 days, you can do hot dogs for 1 or 2 days, but 10 to 14 days of the, beans and hot dogs for breakfast, you're kind of over it.
Yeah. Ease of diving. So we got ease of diving.
Yep.
We've got good sea life, obviously, like I said, and then good food and good nightlife.
Yeah, warm water for me.
There you go. Water temperature is another one.
Yeah. What about you? You got any things that definitely
For sure. I mean, that you kind of hit them already, but I think the first thing after having good sea life is good food. So if you're going on a trip that happens to have non-divers or divers that are not as gung ho, that's not going to want to do 5 dives a day with you, you want someplace where both you and they can kind of hang out and still have a great time, even if they're not going to be spending the entire day diving. So you want a place where you got good food, good beaches, potentially. If you're diving in a place that does have warm water, that's another great one. I didn't think of it, but adding that to my list. And you kind of touched on it too, the ease of diving. So we'll get into it as we chat about it. But like you said, if liveaboards kind of is great, but if you had a dive destination that has great shore diving as well as boat diving, it really opens up your options. And then, of course, how easy is it to get to? It's one of those things where if you happen to be pretty close or a short puddle jump flight away from somewhere, it's going to be less chance of having a traumatic experience getting to your dive destination. But then again, some of my favorite places takes several days to get to. So
for sure. And I think you also have to, when you think about that, I think the ease, for me, the ease or complications of travel, I think that is only, for me, again, it's only weighed by how much time you're going to spend there. If we're going to go for 4 or 5 days, it's not worth doing 24 hours of travel each way.
Right. Yep.
So if you're going to do 24 hours of travel each way, you need to be going for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 30 days if you can, but otherwise, if you're going to do a week, 3 days to a week, you fly somewhere that's like a 6-hour flight.
Right.
Yep,
for sure. And I think the only other one I'd drop in, and it kind of ties hand in hand with good sea life, is going to places that have good visibility, especially for shooting wide angle. It's always nice.
For sure. And I thought of one that we just completely overlook, and I think because it's just so second nature to us, is having a good dive guide.
Yes, place that's good dive guys.
And
yes, that will always make or break you.
Having good dive professionals and use them as a resource. Like if you're in Bon Air where it's a lot of shore diving and you're on your own, make sure you ask the local dive masters when you're getting air. Ask them, say, hey, what's a good place to go for eels or for shipwreck or for small macro life, if you want to see turtles, where's the hot spot for turtles, something like that. And if you're going to somewhere like Cozumel, there are a ton of dive shops. If you don't know anybody, ask someone in your local dive community if they know a dive shop in Cozumel, or go on to like Scuba Board.
Yep.
And do some research and try to find a good dive op that has a good dive guide that'll be able to take care of you and show you the things you want to see.
Yep. Very good point. So without further ado, why don't we just pick one of the first ones that come to mind? I think our list will probably be the same, but what's the first destination that you'd say is one of your favorite places to go if you're shooting underwater photography?
That's hard. I would probably say if I'm going to do some underwater photography, I would probably start in either Cozumel or the Caymans.
Well, let's pick one and go with it. Let's start with Cozumel.
Let's start with Cozumel.
I thought that's what you were going to say.
It is.
And I'll just start off by saying, other than this was one of our first big dive trips together, it's got the total package and it's easy to get to. One of the things we didn't talk about is it's relatively inexpensive. It's cheap to get to get there. It's cheap to stay there. And the diving is relatively inexpensive also. Secondly, the food is also inexpensive and amazing. It's unbelievable.
For sure. It checks pretty much every box. The visibility is insane. Yeah. I mean, 150 foot plus viz almost every time you get in the water. I think you and I did a dive with our buddy Valrath our dive guide down there, where one of the first times we dove with him, we did a night dive. It was a full moon, and he was like, "Everybody turn off their lights." So we're underwater, and he's like signaling everybody turn off their lights. And surprisingly, we're in like 40 feet of water, but it's like someone has on a fairly dim light everywhere. I mean, you could see fine. You know, it was really super cool. Although he did have us do most of the dive with the light off, which was a little much for me.
Yeah, I'd say it was great to try that, and you could see the bioluminescence, and it was great to see visibility even at night. It was great, but we didn't need to do that for 30 minutes.
Exactly.
And it was a little much. I was like, can I turn my light on now? This is ridiculous. I want to look for critters.
I'm trying to take pictures here. I can't do it without my lights.
Exactly. But yeah, the visibility is unbelievable. We've both been there several times, and it's always been consistently good visibility, and the color of the water is just amazing. And then the other thing goes back to the ease of diving, in that because pretty much all the diving is drift diving, and it's like being on an underwater human transportation escalator thing.
Like like at the airport when you get on the moving sidewalk, right?
Exactly. So you just get in, you don't have to kick or fight the current ever. The boat just follows you, and you get to see some amazing walls, amazing rock formations all over the place, great sea life, and you're just scooting by. And of course, as an underwater photography, sometimes that fights against you, but it's never that. I shouldn't say never. It's usually not terribly strong. So if you need to actually go and take a picture of something that's on the wall, it's not too hard usually to fight the current in most cases. Yeah,
and also the more experienced you get diving and controlling your buoyancy. I know I beat that like a dead horse, but the better you get at that, and the more you dive, the more you'll understand how that current is working and how you can actually swim against it with minimal effort to make the maximum progress. You know, like ducking behind coral heads to swim close and around them, so the water's kind of, it's like being in a wind tunnel. If you hide behind something, that current's not going to affect you. It's when you get out and away from it, then the current kicks in. So you just, closer to the bottom and stuff, you can make your way back to something and then get your shot. You can't necessarily spend a ton of time there depending on your exposure, but.
So what are some of your other highlights that when you think of Cozumel just jumps out at you, why you like it so much?
Oh, definitely the sea life. I mean, I think we've seen everything from seahorses to sharks and pretty much everything in between.
Yeah, sea life is great there. Obviously, having good visibility means you can see lots of rays, even if they're at a distance. You can, even though you may not be able to get close to them because they handle current a lot better than you. And same thing with sharks. But we've seen nurse sharks and reef sharks and spotted eagle rays, and obviously lots of other rays. So lots of good pelagic stuff to see, and lots of awesome critters. And the walls are beautiful, especially at night. The night dives there are fantastic.
And we've seen other, like even some stuff that is a little more difficult to find, like splendid toadfish, frogfish, things like that. Like I said, seahorses, those are not super common. We've seen a lot of stuff that you normally don't see in a single destination other places.
Yeah, and the rock formation like Palancar Bricks jumps out at me as one of my favorite dive sites, not because of the sea life, but just because of all the cool lava or for formation, things like that.
Devil's Throat.
Devil's Throat. Yeah. If anyone takes you to Devil's Throat, make sure your dive guide does not take you there at the end of the dive. It should be dived at the beginning of the dive.
Exactly. I think one of the ones that stick out for me were we went up to the north on Cozumel, which is kind of rare. It's definitely for more advanced divers. But we did a wall on the north side where we saw probably 12 to 18 eagle rays, and they were just hanging off the wall. it looked like they were just floating still because the current was so strong. We really kind of just flew by them and couldn't fight the current especially with the smaller fins. I think even if I had free dive fins, I wouldn't have been able to stay there long. But the current was just ripping, and they were just so majestic, just hanging out there like they were just suspended with no effort, just staying still. That was pretty sweet.
Yeah, it was quite the memorable dive. I think it was also the dive where our friend Britt went into deco, and we had to keep her company for like 15 minutes.
Right.
While she cleared her dive computer. I think it was that dive. It was definitely that day, but it was, I think it was that dive that happened.
I'm not sure if it was that dive or the one in the afternoon, but it was definitely that day.
Either way, it was a great day.
Yeah,
it was a great day diving.
And they also checked the boxes for food. They've got great food.
Yeah. So talk about the food. What are some of the highlights when you think Cozumel? What are the top three food items that you want to get there?
Well, I think we both know the top food item is esquite.
That is damn right.
I mean, why don't you tell us about the esquite, Todd?
Okay.
How did we find esquite?
So when we first went there, a lot of the bars and restaurants are right around the town square. And so we went there for drinks. While we were doing that on 2 different restaurants in several days, we just happened to see these lines of what looked like 50 locals just lining up for no reason in the middle of the square, all right up to a table that was sitting there empty. And we're like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden at 7:00, I think it was at night, some old guy got out of his pickup truck and pulled up this giant pot. We didn't know what it was at the time. And everyone just started buying all this stuff. And that line never went down all night long. So after 2 nights, we're like, we got to find out what this is. What is everyone lining up for? And so we went in line. We found someone that spoke English, and we're like, what are you waiting in line for? And the guy's like, corn soup. It's called esquite. You got to have it. And we're like, what are you, corn soup? Really? You're all lining up for corn soup?
And it was all locals, right?
Yes, yeah. All locals. Yeah. And like, all right, well, heck, we're here for a week or 10 days, whatever it was. If the locals like it, everything else here the food is amazing. We got to try this one day. So that next day, I think we made sure to show up, and we waited in line, and the guy showed up and moseyed on with his gigantic pot and got you a styrofoam cup and poured the corn soup, poured a little bit of Mexican cream, some chili powder. What else was in there?
Well, just so people don't get confused, it's not corn soup. It's basically just corn and a butter broth.
Right. So the soup is really just melted butter.
Right. So it's not like I don't want people to think that it's a robust soup or like a chowder or like a bisque or anything like that. It's basically corn, melted butter, probably some water from the corn or whatever.
Lime. There's
some lime, and then he puts some herbs in there. Don't ask him what the herbs are, because he'll tell you that it's pot, but it's not. But it's not. But then he'll scoop that into a cup. He'll drain it, scoop it into a cup, and then he'll put a little bit of that juice from the pot into the cup of corn, and then he'll add mayo, cream, chili powder, lime juice. And is it cayenne powder or some kind of spicy?
Yeah, some sort of chili
powder or something.
We asked what it is. I have it written down somewhere. But anyways, look, it's a taste of heaven. It's unbelievable, and you've got to try it. There's different. The old guy's not there anymore. I think you said last time you were there, but another group is still carrying on the trend, and it's still amazing.
Yes, I was there in January, and still amazing. It was a young girl this time. They could have been related. I'm not sure, but and I say that only because there was only one person doing esquite. You'd walk around the square. There'd be like 5 or 6 other vendors selling churros, selling tacos, selling margarita or whatever it is, you know, but there was only one person doing esquite, and it's still the same thing. There's still only one person doing esquite. Like I said, last time I was there in January, it was a girl doing it. So I don't know if they're related or not, but it tasted the same. It was delicious.
Yeah, so that is definitely something you have to check out if you happen to be going to Cozumel, whether you're going for diving or not. The tacos are amazing. The mole is great.
Mole's
I know
good, yeah.
my wife loves the chicken mole, the mole enchiladas, anything mole she will order and she loves. And
fresh churros. She's got to have her fresh churros.
You got it. Yeah. Fresh churros are amazing. Margaritas, you can't leave
Mexico,
margaritas
right?
out. Yep.
So and queso fundido, basically just cheese and meat. Kind of you dip it with flour tortillas or chips. That stuff's always delicious. I mean, the food there, I don't think I've had a bad food dish. I may have had a food dish that I might not have every time I go. I might go, oh yeah, that was good, but I'll have it next time or something like that. But I don't think I've had anything that I've been like, oh man, that's disgusting. I can't eat that. Because we've been to places where that's been the case.
Yes, for sure.
So,
but obviously you guys are getting a feel for it. The food is great. If you like Mexican food, you're going to love Cozumel. If you like fresh fish, I think it's the other thing to harp on. Like, I mean, we've had some amazing times where they had just caught fish. Fishermen had just brought it up, the huge fresh fish that just got pulled off the pier, and they cooked it up, and the most amazing fish tacos, amazing just fresh fish fillets, but just so good.
And as far as staying there, what did you find out about staying in Cozumel? Was it super expensive? Was it cheap? Was it middle of the road?
No, it's one of the cheaper places that you're going to find. As cheap as you want to get to stay for lodging, you'll be able to find a price that you can get. So there's lots of variations of inexpensive travel, and however low you're willing to go, you'll be able to find that price and have a bed.
I think our buddies Ethan and Britt actually stayed in a hostel for like $10 a day.
Yes,
or something like that, and had their own actual room. It wasn't like a standard hostel where it's a bunch of bunk beds or a bunch of beds in a big room. And they had their own room, community shower, community bathroom, but they had their own bedroom. So
yeah, we were living it up at a Hotel Cozumel for like, I don't know, $75 a night.
Yeah, I want to say it was like 100 or something, 125, 75, somewhere in there. It wasn't bad.
It was still inexpensive, but we had I think that at the time was the biggest pool in all of Cozumel, and it also had its own dock. So when we signed up with their dive operation, they actually came up and would pick us up if we wanted right from the dock, which was really neat.
Yeah. So, and getting around the island, you can rent a scooter and zip around the island, or a car. I mean, car rental is pretty cheap there as well. Airbnbs, we did an Airbnb there before. I think the biggest thing you have to be prepared for, if I was going to ding Cozumel for something, is that the hot tubs never work. But you have things that it's the Caribbean, it's a island,
Mexico.
It's Mexico. Things don't always work like they're supposed to. We've had where the hot water wasn't working. Worked when we got there. It stopped working during the trip. They came and fixed it and started working again. Air conditioners didn't work. Were busted. They had to switch rooms where we had a working air conditioner. Busted hot tubs. I think that's our running theme for pretty much every trip we go on. But there were a few things you have to kind of be prepared for could happen.
That is a very, very good caveat. If you're traveling to any destination in Mexico, diving or not, but it's obviously on a dive trip for sure, whether it's Cozumel, Isla Mujeres, pretty much anywhere, no matter how nice something looks and how the staff looks like they should have their stuff together, there's going to be things that behind the scenes aren't quite right. And you're just going to have to let it go and realize you're there to have a good time and not spend it at the hotel. You're there for diving. You're there to experience the culture, the food. That's your priority. Yep. And expect a broken hot tub. Expect your AC to maybe be out and have to change rooms 2 or 3 times to find one that does. That's just how it goes anytime you're somewhere in Mexico.
And what would you, so I think we've spent, a good 15 minutes or so on Cozumel, so we must love it. And also, if anybody has any questions about any of the places that we mentioned today, whether it's dive guides or dive ops or places to stay or food or anything like that, or dive sites, feel free to drop us a line and we'll gladly answer any of your questions. But other than that, where would you say is your second favorite place, Todd?
Yeah, I think the number 2 one, also probably due to primacy effect, but it's still one of my favorite places to go, is Grand Cayman.
I would agree.
Yep. So again, we're still in the Caribbean. It's relatively easy to get to, but Grand Cayman really has it all for a dive destination. It's warm water. It's warm weather. It's, unlike Mexico, has some amazing hotels to stay at. Again, at varying price points, but I mean, you can stay at the Ritz if you wanted, at a Westin, at a Marriott, or before the hurricane, there was a 4 Points, so a nice courtyard. I forget it was.
They have,
what it used to be.
I think the way I look at it is they have everything from a Comfort Inn all the way up to a Four Seasons, and everything in between.
And they're all on 7 Mile Beach. Yes. So, no matter where you stay, you can walk the beach and just have this beautiful stretch of pink and white sand and just take a stroll of the water. And it's just amazing. So again, I think let's start off with talking about the diving and what we like about the diving there. The first thing that jumps out at me is, again, the visibility is amazing there. The sea life is amazing, but still to this day, some of my favorite shore dives anywhere are in Grand Cayman.
Agreed. I know that from experience, we've both been several times, that you can go to Grand Cayman and dive for 7 days and never step foot on a boat. There are a couple of boat dives I would recommend if you're going, but you don't have to step on a boat. And probably one of the other things that it has over Cozumel and a lot of other places is that there is a dive, if you're newly certified and it's your first dive after getting certified. So say dive number 5 for you. It's got a dive for you that's super easy, that you'll be able to do no problem. That's super shallow, not complicated. All the way to, if you're a tech diver and you want to go down, they have a wall that drops off 600 feet. So you can get as technical or as simple as you want to be. You don't have to have an advanced certification to go to the Caymans and have a great time.
Yeah, I totally agree. And to kind of complement that point, just the overall diversity of the types of dives you can do. So if you want to dive a wreck, you've got the kiddie wake, right? Don't know if it's on its side, standing up, or upside down at this point, but it was one of the biggest wrecks that were in the shallowest water. So it's great for even most wreck dives are down at 100 feet. This is very accessible.
Yeah, I think it says in 60 feet of water.
Yeah. So you can do a wreck dive and just hang outside, or if you go in, they've machined out, so there's always an easy exit point. So even if you're not comfortable with diving a wreck, they make it about as easy as possible. And if you're not in a wreck, they have amazing walls, even from a shore dive. Crack conchs, I know both you and I, one of our favorite dives to do, and just those small walls that just have tons of tarpon that hang out, and all this other great sea life that's there.
Lighthouse Point.
Yep. You gotta go see the mermaid too at Sunset House, right? So any type of diving you want to do, there's usually a place to go do it. And a lot of times it's right off the shore. And even if you're not a diver, you've obviously got Stingray City, which is definitely a must do.
Well, that's also one of the benefit with having so many shore dives is that if, say, you're a diver, but your spouse is a snorkeler, they can snorkel while you're diving. It's the dives are, the water's that clear. There's a lot of dives that are like 60 feet, but you have to make a run out from shore where it's, 5 feet, and within 100 yards of shore, it drops down to 60 feet. So there's plenty of snorkeling in that area for them to do over, 10 feet of water, 20 feet of water, all the way out to 60 feet of water. And so you can enjoy your scuba dive while they're snorkeling.
Great point. Actually, on one of my more recent visits, I went with my buddy James, who was a new diver, and his wife and friend were there too, and they didn't dive. So several of us went diving, and the rest of them snorkeled kind of and watched from above, and still saw tons of sea life. They got to see lots of squid and got to watch us dive and check out the topography. They had a great time. And that is one of the big benefits of Grand Cayman over Cozumel is that it's, Cozumel, if you're not a diver, food is amazing, but there's not a lot of beaches to hang out. There are snorkel spots, but it's not a place for a non-diver that's going to want to spend any more than a day or two.
Exactly.
Whereas Grand Cayman, if you're just a beach bum or you just want to do things like jet ski or snorkel or do there's tons and tons of things to do for non-divers. And if you are a diver, you can spend weeks and weeks there and never get bored of diving. So it's great for if you're going with a mixed group of people that are divers and non-divers. There's going to be something for everyone.
Yeah. And again, there's plenty of, like I said, if you want to do boat dives or shore dives, either way, you can't go wrong. I mean, you have to hit your key points. You have to hit Stingray City. Yep. You have to dive it and go to the sandbar. So 2 trips. And you have to do the kiddie wake, which is a boat trip. But then, like Todd had said, you have to dive the Mermaid at Sunset House, their house reef, Crack Conch, which is right next to the turtle farm. And then Lighthouse Point, which is where Guardian of the Reef is, another underwater statue, and another wall that's really a short swim from shore. And then there's just all up and down through there. There's plenty of shore dives.
I'm blanking. It's funny. I have a rash guard from the place. I see the Big Apple on there. Why am I blanking on the name of the place right downtown?
I've got it.
Eden's Rock
and Devil's Grotto.
And Devil's Grotto.
Yeah.
Right downtown. Actually, if you're diving Sunset House during the day, it's kind of on the way from 7 Mile Beach. It's as you're heading towards Sunset House.
Or if you're on a boat, a cruise ship, and they dock there, it's an easy walk or cab ride from the boat docks down to Eden's Rock and Devil's Grotto. And you can do, 2 dives within your break from the cruise ship.
Yeah, before you have to go back to the boat.
Back to the boat.
Exactly. Very good point. So if you happen to be coming here on a shore excursion from a major cruise line, and you don't want to do a cruise sponsored event, you can basically just get off the boat, it'll drop you off pretty much right downtown. You can go right to Devil's Grotto, get all your gear, get in 2 great dives. They're shallow, but tons and tons of stuff to see. Sea life is great. Visibility is great.
Schools of tarpon.
Big schools of fish. There's swim throughs to go through. That really neat. All at super shallow depths. Really, really great diving.
And I think every dive that I've done at Eden's Rock and Devil's Grotto, I've seen turtles.
Yep.
So
turtles and squid are there quite often too. I've seen squid on most of those dives as well.
I was saying, what about the food?
Again, one of the best places to go for food, but unlike Cozumel, where it's pretty much Mexican food all the time with some rare exceptions, Grand Cayman has just got an amazing variety of restaurants, all from very affordable, some of our best pizza places that we've been to.
Absolutely.
And Lone Star Barbecue is great, to just some amazing, amazing fine dining experiences. The food, there's tons and tons of food from all over the world, different cultures that are really good.
Yep. Good sushi, a couple of good sushi restaurants.
Yep.
Good. Just.
Where'd you have your Zacapa? Where did we have our fine dining experience? Out on the Plantation House or something like that?
Yeah, we did Plantation House. I think the first time I had Zacapa was at the Ritz, and I'm blanking on the name of the restaurant there.
I don't think it's in business anymore, but there was a restaurant bar, I want to say at the Hilton or the Hyatt, where we had that bucket of mussels and Tycoon, yes.
Tycoon at the Ritz.
Yeah,
phenomenal.
Tycoon's great.
Phenomenal. Yep.
So, I mean, there was a French bistro we went to that had amazing French food that was impossible to find. But once we did, it was fantastic. Anyways, we could go on, and we'll try to put in the show notes some of links to the places that we liked. Even breakfast. What was the Sunshine Cafe or something like
Sunshine Cafe, yeah.
It was a great place for breakfast.
And there was there's a place on the beach that you can go at sunset and have dinner, and it's not Plantation House or Hemingway's. It was like had kind of like a reggae feel to it. It was like all a bunch of wooden picnic benches. I don't remember the name of the place. I'm blanking. And then there's
we'll look it up and throw it in.
And then there's
afterwards.
My Bar at Sunset House.
Gotta have some mudslides.
Exactly.
Yeah, mudslides and mango smoothies. Yep. Could crack conch while you're shore diving there. Make sure to stop by and have some conch fritters.
Go to My Bar at sunset. Watch the sunset. Stick around for some drinks. And I just remember one of my most vivid memories from scuba diving. Wasn't necessarily while I was diving. We were at My Bar. We had stuck around for the sunset. We'd been diving all day, and we were contemplating a night dive. And so we were having drinks. The sun had set, and it was pitch black outside, except for up by the bar. But the bar overlooks the water, and you see all these pools of light underwater just moving around, and it's all these different groups of scuba divers doing a night dive. And so you'll have all these pools of light all over the place, and it was just to visually see the blue water lit up from underneath and all these different places, and all of it moving around was just super, super cool. That made a big impression on me.
Yeah, it was quite the surreal experience. It was really the first time to realize how many people are passionate about night diving and exploring and things like that. And it's a great place to hang out. Great place after you're done diving, obviously, to get your mudslides with lots of rum in them. Otherwise, just get them virgin if you're contemplating you're doing some diving later. Right. It's funny. I remember we were hanging out there in one of those dives. We had done a night dive by ourselves. We're like, oh man, we don't know where the mermaid is. And we just started chatting some people up at the bar, and we ended up finding a judge that had been lived there on the island forever. Yeah. And always comes out just at night and just wants to get his diving in.
And he's old school. Like, he only dives the back plate. I remember that. Yeah. Yep.
No BC, just a back plate. And he's like, yep, you guys want to go? I'll guide you. And he took us out, gave us our local tour from the local judge in Grand Cayman. And
he was awesome. He was a super nice guy. Yes. He told me that if we ever wanted to move there, he would sponsor us. You have to be sponsored or pay like $10,000 a person to move and live in Grand Cayman. But he was like, yeah, I'll sponsor you guys if you guys want to move back and work at a dive shop. But
maybe we should
maybe when we retire.
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
But I think what we might do is maybe we should make this a best Caribbean
edition. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Because I think we're getting close to an hour in, and we've done two places.
Yes, I think so. So we'll update that a little bit later on, and we'll definitely make sure the title make sure it says Caribbean edition.
Right.
With that in mind, why don't we move on and talk about number 3 destination that might pop in your mind?
Number 3 is I'm torn on number 3 as well. I'm kind of in the same area, but in the Dutch Caribbean, I'm thinking either Bonaire or Curacao. And I lean more toward Bonaire.
Yes, I think that's the right answer. That's what I would go with. Despite how good of a time we had in Curacao, if you had to go to one or the other, let's say
I would pick Bonaire.
Let's go make it. Yep. So tell us, what is Bonaire? What makes Bonaire so unique for a dive destination, and what's appealing to it for underwater photographers and for divers in general?
Well, I think for divers in general, I think that it's similar to the Caymans, where you don't have to get on a boat. You can, but it's pretty much you rent a truck, not a car, and you get your tanks, and there are air fill stations all around the island. And you get 2 tanks, you go do 2 dives, come back and get 2 more tanks, go do 2 more dives.
So how do you know where to go diving?
There are these beautiful, lovely yellow rocks on the side of the road. So as you're driving around the island, you'll see these big yellow rocks, and they'll have little names on them, like the Hilma Hooker, or the Salt Pier, or a ton of other names that I can't remember off the top of my head. But so they'll have the name of the dive site, and there's literally, in some places, there's a yellow rock every 200 yards. It seems like, some of them they're like bam, 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 and they're so close together. But even though you're getting in the water at that one spot, you stay in that one spot because there's so much to see. That even though you could swim, you could do 2 dive sites on one tank, you don't, because there's so much to see in that one area. And it's just amazing how much sea life there is.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is one of the things that stands out to me for Bonaire is, out of anywhere in the Caribbean, the density of sea life just seems to be so much higher than anywhere else. The visibility is good. I wouldn't say as good as Grand Cayman or Cozumel. It depends very from day to day. Yep. But it seemed, as Dalton was saying, everywhere you go, there's tons of dive sites, and every dive site you go on, the amount of sea life just seems like, I'm not in the Caribbean. There's way too much sea life here. It's amazing.
I mean, it doesn't rival Indonesia or anything like that, but it's as close as you're going to get in the Caribbean. Yeah. There's just a ton of sea life, and everything from adult to juvenile, and grunts, blennies, spotted drums, just everything in droves.
And some of the biggest schools of fishes that I've seen anywhere in the Caribbean were on several of the dive sites in Bonaire.
Absolutely.
Just amazing. Like you can get swallowed and engulfed whole by the schools of fish hanging out by a pier in Bonaire.
Yep, absolutely.
Just absolutely amazing. So it's definitely a different vibe because, as Dalton mentioned, you can go, and there's a couple of famous boat dives there, but you're going there to go shore diving and to get that shore diving experience. So unlike most places, even compared to Grand Cayman, it's definitely targeted more for divers only, although there are plenty of things for non-divers to do. You pretty much want to go here only if your whole group is divers. And you're going to be shore diving almost the whole time. And it's going to be a lot of fun and a very different vibe compared to anywhere else in the Caribbean.
Yeah, I would say one of the things to keep in mind when you go to Bonaire is to make sure you have a good pair of booties.
Yes.
And use open heel fins. I've done Bonaire with closed heel fins and a pair of water shoes. You definitely don't do it barefoot. It's even though there's some good beaches and some good sandy spots, you have to get past the rocky iron shore to get to those spots. So you have to do open heel fins and booties, and hands down.
especially if you have a camera with you, because it's going to be bad enough if you don't have, if you're not taking a camera with you, to have to go past a shore break. You've got sand everywhere and try to get in open heel fins, even if you switch from wearing water booties to get past the rocky place where you can float and then put on your full foot fins. It's just too much work. And then as soon as you add a camera to the mix, it's just way too much trouble. So even if you hate having to wear open heel fins in warm weather and Bonaire, just suck it up and do it.
I trust me, I live in open heel fins. I mean, not open hill, but closed full foot fins. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I live in full foot fins, so I tried Bonaire with my camera, full foot fins, and a really nice pair of water shoes, and it was just a pain in the ass. Excuse my language. It was a pain in the to try to get past the rocks and then change from the water shoes into my full foot fins while holding a camera.
Yep.
And then taking those water shoes, putting them on a carabiner and clipping them to a BC so they would stay out of the way. Just a big pain in the butt. So definitely, just like Todd said, suck it up, do the booties and open hill fins. It'll make your life so much easier.
Yeah. But once you do and you see some of the dive sites, again, the amount of sea life is amazing. Again, the variety and types of dives.
Absolutely.
Dalton mentioned the Helm Hooker, which is a shipwreck also, and very, very cool. A lot of times they advertise that as a boat dive. You actually can swim out to it, and it's not terribly bad, assuming the water conditions are pretty good and the current's not that strong. May and I actually went and did that as a shore dive. Salt Pier is also fantastic. Check out you'll have to do a little bit of research. It seems every time we go, the rules about if and when can you go dive it depends. The unofficial rule is if people are it's still a working pier. If people are working it, you're not supposed to dive it. If they're not working the pier, you are. Back in the day, they would tell you you'd have to get permit or special permission, yada, yada, yada. That rule I don't think is official. And it's one of those things, just be smart, ask around, and then just make your decision. But it is, if you can do it, it's a really cool dive. There's lots and lots of great macro life under the pier. There's lots of schools of fish hanging out with the pier. So it makes for some great wide angle and close focus wide angle. That's also one of my favorite ones. And I'm trying to remember the ones further up north, but you ask around. There are lots of famous dive sites, but we've also stumbled upon some no-name dive sites no one told us about, and they're all equally amazing. It's really, really a great place to go for shore diving.
Yeah, some of the places up north that you were mentioning, they're in the national park there.
Yes,
and north of, I think it's Rincon or Rincon. I don't know how they pronounce it. And but yeah, you go into the national park and there's some just phenomenal dives.
Yeah.
You know, I want to say one was like Carpata or something like that. Carpata.
Yeah, Carpata is one of them. Yeah. Down south, White Slave is also a famous one. Yeah. That's close to the pier, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. And if you get a chance to go over to climb Bonaire, there's some stuff around there as well.
Diving is fantastic. The experience of the fact that you're renting a pickup truck and throwing tanks in the back and kind of diving on your own schedule is really neat. The fact that pretty much everyone out there are divers too. So you're just all driving on trucks. You end up meeting a bunch of people right on the beach or your dive site. And it's a really cool community. That was really unique also. That was great. And then again, the food there, I had a really great experience.
Yeah, same. The food was amazing. I think one of my favorite things that I've had recently, in say the last 4 years on a dive trip, was a thing called donor brood. And it's basically a very fluffy pita stuffed with, shaved meat, and it's spicy, has a little kick to it. They put a mayonnaise type dressing on it, and it was just phenomenal. A guy told us about it, and then we went there like on the second day, and I think we had it 4 other days for lunch after that on a 10-day trip. And it was delicious. And then there's a lot of really great places. You told us about one place that we went to. I don't remember the name of it.
What'd you have there?
I don't remember. Had a really good.
But it was really good.
Had a really good bottle of wine. I want to say it was a French or Italian place.
Okay. Yeah, well, I'll look up. There's a few places that we had some really, really great. Again, more on the fine dining experience, but really, really good food there. It's also very different than other places because it's a Dutch island, so you have more of the European influence. So a lot more European style restaurants there. The vibe is also very European. So lots and lots of great places to check out while you're there.
And I would recommend while you're there diving and driving around, maybe take either 1 or 2 afternoons or take 1 full day. It's hard for me to say take a full day away from diving. So dive in the morning and then take time to drive around the island because they have a huge salt flats where they mine salt, which is amazing to see. And then they have a ton of pink flamingos.
Yes.
And over by where the salt flats are salt ponds. I don't know what you want to call it. They have a variance in color from almost dry where they're driving these earth movers across it, scraping up salt. And during the day, you see it looks like you're looking out on a field of diamonds or gems because it's just the ground is all sparkling. And then you go a little further and you get into a bit more of maybe a couple of inches of water. Yeah. And, it'll have a certain color to it, like more of a brown color. But then you'll get over to another salt pond, and it'll be like pink.
Yep.
And because of some of the krill and stuff and shrimp and stuff in there, from what I understand, that's where a lot of the flamingos feed on. And that's why because flamingos are actually white, but because of what they eat, it turns their feathers and everything pink.
That's right. You're not the first person that told me that, Mr. Science. I had no idea if that was even true. I always thought that was complete. But I'll have to tell you, if there's any proof, this place would be it because the water looks pink, just like the pink flamingos do, and it's pretty surreal and it's awesome. And the complementary colors because the water and you get that seafoam green, and then you have this nice tan sand, and mud that you've seen there, and then the Caribbean blue water, and then all of a sudden there's ponds of pink iridescence, and then sometimes metallic looking water. It's very, very surreal. Yeah. It's just very cool. And we'll have to fact check that whole thing about flamingos being pink. I'm sure you're right because you're not the first source that's told me that. But that's awesome. Yeah. And then it's very cool.
Yep. And then there's down south there's a couple of cool kiteboarding beaches where you get a lot of wind coming in the south, and it's just a lot of kiteboarding and stuff that's really cool to watch.
Yeah, so if you like to take pictures topside as well as underwater, there are some great shots. Like I said, by White Slave, there's great landscape in general, but then you've got the flamingos, so you got wildlife there.
Lighthouses.
You've got the kite surfers. The lighthouse is really cool. So unfortunately, that means you probably have to bring some extra lenses with you, but it'll be worth it. It's very, very cool. Yeah.
But so, yeah, the food was good. Last time I was there, we stayed at a Courtyard by Marriott.
That's right. It just opened recently.
Yep. And it was good. I mean, it wasn't close to the beach, although it was on a canal. It wasn't close to the beach, so there wasn't any good beach life, so to speak. And it wasn't really close to any good dive sites. So it was in town, but yeah, they had, I think Dive Buddies was the dive shop there, and you could go there, pick up your tanks in the morning and throw them in the back of your truck and then go drive to whatever. And when I say drive, I think your closest dive site's like 5 or 10 minutes. of drive. You're not driving very far.
Yeah, not a big deal at all, because your plan is probably to drive around in the island anyway and check all the different dive sites. Exactly. So it's not a big deal. On the flip side, I stayed at Divi Flamingo Beach Resort. So I was on one of the few beach resorts that they had. The rooms, now this was a while ago, I forget how many years ago, I'd say maybe 8 years ago. So they may have renovated since then. The rooms were adequate, but nothing great. But they had a nice pier to do a shore dive from, and they had tons and tons of squid in Bonaire. So it was a great shore dive to do night dives from their resort. But I would not say you had to stay there by any means, because you're going to be in a car or a truck, I should say, to drive anywhere. So, and there's a lot
of dive resorts there. There's Captain Don's and several others, and a lot of them will have boats that you can do boat dive, or trucks you can do driving around the island. But definitely is number 3, is a good solid 3 on the list.
Yeah, I think we'll have to stop there and just sit, like you said, let's just keep it at 3 of our favorite Caribbean dive destinations for underwater photography, and really for diving in general. But we'll just come out with some other podcasts to focus on some other areas.
Yeah, I think that's good. And I also think that we could also do something of, where is your favorite place to dive for whale sharks?
Definitely.
Sharks, because eels, rays, whatever it is.
Yeah, I think maybe we'll quickly say some honorable mentions. The first thing that jumps to mind is Isla Mujeres, right? You don't need to have anyone be a diver, but to get some great shots of whale sharks,
for sure.
And if you have a short period of time and you only have a weekend, you can get some great shots.
Absolutely, especially from the States. And again, this is all based from if you live in the U.S. I would also say going off of Grand Bahama, or with Stewart's Cove off of Nassau in the Bahamas, there's a lot of sharks, a lot of black tips, tiger beaches off of Grand Bahama. So there's just a lot of good shark life there.
And then one more honorable mention is Key Largo. If you're into wrecks, lots of shipwrecks off of Key Largo, lots of great photo opportunities there. And then there's also Rainbow Reef, I think. So for the non-wreck lovers, or easy reef going, and good visibility.
Molasses Reef.
That's what I was. Thank you. Molasses Reef. So another honorable mention there. But I'm sure everyone's got their favorite Caribbean dive destination. So we'd love to hear from you guys. So definitely hit us up on social media or email us and let us know where your favorite place to dive is in the Caribbean.
Absolutely. And like I said, I know we sure we missed a few places between Roatan, Utila, Turks and Caicos.
We'd love to hear from you. So, there's lots of places. Let us know what your favorite places are and why, and what you loved about it. And hopefully we'll be able to, on a future episode, just read and do some user feedback and let everyone know what the user community thinks of it.
Sounds good.
Go from there. Yeah. So I think that'll wrap it up for this week. So as usual, Dalton, why don't you tell everyone where they can find more of your work?
So you guys can find me at daltonham.com for my photography, as well as Dalton Hamm Photography on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Instagram. Everything's under the same branding there, Dalton Hamm Photography. And for diving, you can go to the Pirate Dive Crew and check out our dive instruction and workshops. And if you have any questions, feel free to let us know. What about you, Todd?
They can find more of my work at toddreimerphoto.com. So why don't you check out our show notes for more information on where to find all of our tips from today and more examples that we can come up with. We'll try to load up those show notes with everything we talked about today. You can find more of our episodes for this podcast on theaquaticlifepodcast.com. Email us at feedback@theaquaticlifepodcast.com. If you like what you're hearing, please take a moment to rate us on iTunes and subscribe to get all the latest episodes as soon as they come out. So next week, we'll be talking about getting started on an underwater photography series focused on dive etiquette.
Right on. Can't wait to get into that one.
So I think that'll wrap us up for this week, Dalton. Thanks for hanging out and chatting about this fun topic.
Sounds good. It's always a good time.
Tune in next week, everyone. Looking forward to chatting some more.
All right. Talk to you guys later. Bye.
Now it's time for The Aquatic Life After Dark, where Dalton will be giving us the sweet, sweet sounds of ASMR.
All right.
Buoyancy, buoyancy, buoyancy. High pressure tanks. Dive shop.
Scuba diving.
Bubbles.
Current.
Oh, yeah.
Man.
Good time.